All right, here we are with Buffy Handle, amazing and wonderful woman who
He
has
doesn't really know.
who is as people that don't know, she's pretty accomplished and does a lot of amazing and wonderful things, and has a lot of things in the background as well, what she's gonna do. So,
What I'm gonna do? What kind of interview is this?
yeah, no, first question. How long have you had a crush on me for?
Minus 2 seconds after that question, it just went totally out the window.
No, well, as you know, I've started a podcast here, and I wanted to bring you on because I think you're a very, very interesting person. You have amazing background, and I wanted to share it with other people out there who ever wanted to watch and see Buffy and the amazing person that she is.
Ah, well,
Yeah.
that's all of the pressure that I needed.
No pressure.
No pressure.
So, tell a little bit about yourself. Like, where were you born and all that?
Oh, my goodness. Okay, so I am originally from northern Manitoba.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Where?
probably more First Nations than most Cross Lakers that have like
From Michikamak?
moved that have moved away. Sorry, city. No, I am very proud at the fact that I am from northern Manitoba.
Yes.
I actually really believe that when you do the comparison of like, what First Nations people go through and have experienced and what they've managed to encompass as part of their culture in the South is so different than the North.
So true, yeah.
But yet both the North and the South have so many healing opportunities for each other. Like when you
Yeah.
go North, people, they know how to hunt, they know how to fish, they know how to do all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And there's like just being on land, right? And
Yeah.
then in the South, they have ceremony. And I
Yeah.
really I think that it's a really beautiful opportunity that both Northern and Southern, and I got to experience both. So
Really, eh?
yeah, I stayed north right up until I was about 14 and a half. And
Right.
like most northern people,
Yeah.
there weren't the resources necessarily in place for high school. So making a conscientious decision, and mind you, I was like totally raring to go, but my
Well, how old
parents
are you
were
when
like,
you left?
I was 14 and a half.
14 and a half, eh?
So when my parents finally agreed after like 4 months worth of begging, and I mean, I'm directly from the bush, so I didn't
Yeah,
grow
yeah.
up on the reserve.
Yeah.
And so they just basically gave me one last parental threat, which was like, if you don't behave yourself, you're coming right back to the bush. And I knew what that meant, right? And that
Yeah,
was
yeah.
right back to like no electricity, no running water. I was the running water.
Right, yeah,
That
yeah.
should have been like my Indian name, running
Running
water.
Running water.
Yeah, there you go. Shoot, that would have been like a really good last name.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, no, and I'm half German, so hence the last name. I mean, and it's so funny too, because even like coming down to the south, and everybody is just like, their perception is like, my lifestyle is a very spiritual lifestyle. I
Right.
think that a lot of the things that I experienced on land has really managed to involve me in understanding and knowing what manifestation is, because it comes from a spiritual place, right?
Right, yeah.
So, and I was very, very fortunate that my parents made a conscientious decision to really ensure that, that the effects from residential schools was actually going to stop.
Right.
At a certain point, right? So
For
I
you.
didn't, yeah, I didn't grow up knowing what drug or alcohol abuse was. I was very, very innocent when I first moved to Winnipeg. I
Really,
thought
eh?
that was stuff that you just seen on TV and like movies. Like I didn't know that it
So
was
were you
very,
like
very real.
isolated quite a bit, like from that?
Oh
guess?
yeah, I was protected from
Protected.
that,
Oh,
and
that's a better word, yeah.
I think that when I was able to develop a certain maturity, I was able to produce for myself. So I moved to Winnipeg, and it's not to say that I was like a full grown but I was able to accept the very basic responsibilities just as the same as an adult.
Right, yeah.
So I wasn't involved with drug abuse. Actually, still to this day, have never actually tried any type of drug in my life.
Did you see any of that growing up though? Like that's
Well,
like
with my parents, no, because I didn't even
okay,
grow up
yeah,
on a
yeah.
reserve. You
Yeah,
could go like
right,
9
yeah.
to 12 months not seeing anybody. So, I mean, we were kind of forced to have siblings as best friends.
That's amazing.
But I mean, I even and it's kind of funny too, because, I go through my experiences, and I have a 4-year-old daughter, and you know, I think about what I was doing at 4 years
Yeah.
old. Like, I used to get up like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning and
Yeah,
sneak
yeah,
out
no
of the
question.
log cabin that my parents built with their own 2 hands and go sleep with the lead dog in her dog house.
Really?
And
That's how you grew up?
yeah, and I
Wow,
think
that's
about
amazing.
like, what if my kid was sneaking out of the house at 5 o'clock in the morning? I would be like dying in the city here. But
Oh, I could.
you know,
That's amazing.
life is very, very different now.
Well, what
but-
about school? Were you homeschooled or were you?
Yeah, actually. So basically, what my parents would do is they would collect all of the work that needed to be done, and
Right.
they were teaching us. And it was funny because I mean, even the way that we learned our multiplication table was like sitting in the corner and reciting it. And my dad, you know, he always held a certain standard with us, which was, you know, we're better than that. We're
Yeah.
better than that. We're
Yeah.
better than that. And so even right down to learning our multiplication table, he would write it out and we had to sit in the corner and look at this diagram and memorize it. And when we
Wow.
felt that we were ready, we had to stand in front of my dad and recite the multiplication table. And
Oh,
as soon
yeah.
as we said, we had to go right back because he did not accept 1 times 2 is and he's like, no, go back to the corner. But it's so weird because oh my goodness, I watched all of my other siblings because I'm the baby of the family.
Yeah.
I seen all of them go through it, and then the
Yours-
day came, it was my turn. And
You're the baby. You're the spoiled one.
oh, I wish I was spoiled. I was the running water, remember?
Yeah,
I
right,
don't know
yeah,
how
yeah.
spoiled you could possibly be when you're the running water. But no, I actually honestly believe that I was probably that was my first level of training into public speaking. So just to kind of, I guess, give everybody a little bit of background, I started off as an artist,
Right.
transitioned into an athlete. From being an athlete, I transitioned and found my love, and my first time actually professionally public speaking as a keynote in a
Really?
conference was when I was 17 years old.
Wow.
And it's so funny
So
because...
you weren't shy when you came out then? Like, were you
Oh,
shy?
I
or-
was. I
Yeah,
couldn't
yeah.
cough, sneeze, or hiccup in front of anybody. But, you know, again, that's at 14 and a half. And,
Yeah.
and what I realized and recognized was that my parents literally put the whole world in the center of my palms. And it was at my discretion, you know, to decide what I wanted the world to offer me. And
Wow.
and which is a very different perspective when you are institutionalized in
Yeah.
a certain way, right? Which
Yeah.
is you have to conform to boundaries, you have to conform to boxes that people put you in. And
Right.
when you're in the bush, there's freedom.
Yeah,
You know,
so
and,
true.
and you're enthrusted and completely wrapped in love and just being a part of everything all at the same time and nothing
yeah.
all at the same time. And you really, it puts things into perspective, which
Yeah.
is having the ability to humble yourself, but also knowing that everything that you do is you spending your life source energy, and it quantifies what you're choosing to do with your life source energy, and moving into that, and especially, you know, as a teenager,
Yeah.
and knowing that
Right.
I'm not going to waste my time doing drugs. I'm not
Right.
going to waste my time doing things that aren't really going to matter
Right.
to my overall lifespan,
Right.
right? And to develop that appreciation. And I mean, part of the reason why I grew up in the bush was because my dad is German.
Right.
And by the way, he's probably the biggest Indian I know. But, you know, like he gave up everything to be, you know, a part of my mother's life.
Right,
And,
yeah.
and really, I mean, that's a huge significance, especially when you decide to marry somebody,
Yeah,
right? I
that's
mean, it's not that, I mean, and I've seen these different concepts of what marriage is. It's like, oh no, we're one now.
Yeah.
Well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Right. And I really think that only two people can really define what that means. But my dad was in absolute love with who she was.
Right.
He was in love with the lifestyle that she came from, and really,
He was.
oh yeah.
Really?
Yeah, they
Love at
knew
first
each
sight?
other for 2 months and they got married. But at that time, my mom had lost her treaty status. And
Right,
so
yeah.
there weren't necessarily any massive supports to have, an Indigenous woman, because she was a woman and because she married a non-Indigenous
Right.
man, that she lost her rights as a status woman or as a status Indian.
Right.
But I've had numerous conversations with my parents, and I mean, I look back at how beautiful of a life and the strength that our family carries
Yeah.
within our legacy from both sides of the
Right.
family. It really truly was a blessing in disguise.
Well,
like
what
our
do-
grandchildren, like the grandchildren in the family, they live in abundance.
Yeah.
And
No,
that
it's so
has
true.
been produced through the abundance of the teachings of what our family consists of. And I know that there is a great sense of pride. I mean, every
Yeah.
family has some things in. It's like it's completely unrealistic for any child, and of course, every child thinks that
Yeah.
they come from the worst family
Yeah,
ever
never,
until
yeah,
you
yeah.
grow and you go, you know what? Oh my God, my family is actually brilliant. My family is something to be proud of, right? And we do. I think that it would be unrealistic for any child to think that, that they shouldn't have scars from their upbringing. Because I'm a parent too, and I'm pretty damn sure that my children could tell some stories about
Yeah,
how I
yeah.
was not exactly perfect 5 o'clock in the morning.
But it's amazing, especially now in this time, how people become closer and think about how important family is, because I think
It is.
with this time, you kind of forget all the materialistic stuff.
But see, this is the
and
thing,
brings
is
people
that's
closer.
part of our legacy is that I think all of us, because of our upbringing being in the bush, I don't think that we ever want to take each other for granted.
Right.
Regardless of if it's a pandemic or not.
Right,
You know,
yeah,
and,
yeah.
and I don't know why. And I used to say this to one young man that I was mentoring. I told him, the biggest mistake that young people make
Yeah.
is they wait for the shit to hit the fan in order to do something about it. And
Yeah,
instead
yeah.
of just like seeing it for what it is and following your instinct. And I really think that today's society, without that connection, and you look at why our elders say that our young people need to connect back to the land.
Right.
And it's because it produces something, not only intertwines with our blood memory, but it also produces something which is called the instinct.
Right.
And that instinct gets diluted by social media. And yes,
Yes,
social media can be something really great in balance, just like everything else in life. Too much of a good thing is no longer in balance.
Right.
Therefore, in natural law, you want to balance everything, right?
Yeah.
Whether that's how much time you're spending with your friends, how much time you're spending with your work, how much time
Right.
you're spending on honoring the body or the shell that you've been given for this lifetime. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, all of those things get intertwined. And so for myself, I really honestly believe that in confidence, I always try to make the most out of every situation and kind of like grab life by the horns and just
Yeah.
feel every moment of it, all of the good things and all of the bad things.
Yeah.
Because I mean, even those, I've been divorced twice.
Yes. Once.
Looking for the third one. No. Can we divorce? I'll ask you for divorce before marriage.
I've been there, done that already once.
So will you be my third and I'll be your
Yes,
second?
there you go.
Yeah. We'll plan our divorce before the marriage, just so we know
Deal.
where we're going. No, but I mean, even in those moments, there was a lot of great value behind, experiencing all of the things that I got to experience. So for most people that may not necessarily know that background, I actually
Right.
started doing investments at a very young age. And I mean, by the time I was 17, I worked 4 jobs. But I was lucky because somebody gave a chance
Right.
and seen something in me that was, I guess, drive.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was matured even at that point, but I bought my first house before I turned 18.
Wow. that's pretty
I had
amazing.
already, helped facilitate building a home too. So, I mean, I definitely, I was interested in things that were different than what other teenagers were interested. Like
That's
they just
amazing.
want to go hang out with friends, and I'm like, that's a waste of time as far as I'm concerned.
What was the
At that
transition then when
age.
you left, like a 14? All of a sudden you come to the big city. It must have been.
Oh, it was awful.
Like,
I
it
got
must have been
stuck
a-
at the back of a bus for an hour and a half because I didn't know at a Winnipeg a transit bus because I didn't know you had to push the lever for the door to open it, and I was so shy
Yeah.
that I did not want to ask
Buffy shy.
anybody. I know, but now and I mean nobody would ever guess, right? But I mean
You're
that's
stuck on the back of a bus for
I
2.
was.
No way.
Yeah, and then I remember, I mean, even processed food was like, a completely different world for me. So I was
Yeah.
actually not physically, I couldn't stomach the food here in Winnipeg when I first moved here.
Right,
It
right.
was an awful experience. And then, I mean, even at that age, I went from 5'7" to 6'1" in 1
Right.
month.
Yeah.
And it was awful because all I wanted to do was hibernate, and I just basically went to school. And that's part of the thing in that transition that a lot of people, whether you're First Nations or not, if you're
Yeah.
from the South, you don't understand what an Indigenous person from the North goes through.
Exactly.
When
yeah.
they transition in, they don't know anybody. They don't know, even just learning how to take a bus. But on top of that, they're expected to get themselves up in the morning. They're expected
Right.
to take themselves to school. And like I said, in the back of my mind, I was always like, oh my God, if I don't do this, I'm going to end up back in the bush. But again, my parents had, I guess, somewhat of a confidence to just say, you know what? Let her try.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and I think that that's always been the parental advice, even coming from my parents while I'm parenting my own children, is that you're not there to put up guards everywhere. What you're
Right,
there
yeah.
is to walk through your children's lives as the protectors. It's almost like when you get too close to a fire. I mean, there's moments where you might burn yourself, but
Yeah.
you're there to just make sure that they don't fall into the fire.
Right,
Right.
right.
You still need to know what fire consists of. So
Yeah.
I think for the most part, when I look at my siblings, and I'm very proud of all of my siblings, and I'm proud of myself. I think that all of us, in our own very purposeful way, carry out part of those paths in that legacy, and we all do it in different ways.
Right. Yeah.
But I think all in all, we've been definitely gifted with a beautiful life
Yeah.
as individuals, but also as a family network.
Right.
So I think a lot of my success has been handed to me in a sense where I've been given really, really good invisible measuring stick and
Right.
mentorship. And that's not just encompassing my parents.
Yeah.
What my parents had instilled in me allowed me to develop mentors that were
Right.
solid.
Yeah,
And it was
yeah.
based off of their characteristics, right? So, I mean, transitioning here in the city, there's some really funny moments, but there's also some really beautiful moments. And it's not to say that it's just been like an absolutely perfect life, or that I've
Yeah, yeah,
never
yeah.
been hurt before. I've
Yeah.
never had my heart broken before, but yeah, finally one guy says no. But I mean, all in all, like I'm 39 years old now, and
What? I thought you were like 29. Wow.
I hide
There's
it well.
a secret there. Yeah. Whatever.
It's called Indian skin.
yeah. I know.
We
I got my
age
mom's.
well. No, but I mean, and so just being involved in dance,
Mm-hmm.
I through my mentorship in traditional mentorship, I was able to capitalize on the opportunity of learning dance.
Right.
And I got to travel to every single continent in the world. I've
That's
been
amazing.
all over the place, and it was paid for.
Yeah.
Well, man, that's what I mean about like capitalizing on that opportunity. But
Right.
there was a certain point where I looked back into the Indigenous community and went, okay, how can I give back to my community?
Right.
And not being able to, or not having to feel the need to leave who you are as an Indigenous person behind
yes.
to pick a career
Yeah.
was really important to me. And so, I mean, I remember being at the European Grammy Awards and staring out at the Mediterranean Sea. And, it's just like,
Really?
man, I would have never
Wow.
guessed as this like little Indian that had, a dog team that was picking spruce bough
Yeah.
and doing all of those things that would end up sitting at the Mediterranean Sea. And I remember in that moment and really thinking about all of the young people.
Yeah.
And really, I think that that's the original concept of what leadership is somebody
Right.
that's willing to lead by example. And my dad has
Yeah.
always said that to me.
Yeah.
The only way that anybody will ever know that you're speaking the truth is because you are already of those things.
Right,
And you're
yeah.
don't and I do follow that philosophy. So I established the first in Manitoba history, a professional dance studio that
That is
represents
amazing.
indigenous culture. That would have never been possible without my mentor. Like he
Really?
really gave me something to grow.
Yeah.
So I don't claim dance to be mine.
Yeah.
But what I do take responsibility for is playing a role in solidifying the philosophy behind our cultural dances.
Right,
That's
right.
where I play my role, and to reinstill the hard work that it takes to dedicate not to our culture, but to dedicate to oneself and
Right.
going through that spiritual journey. Because really, culture is a way of life. It's not a religion.
No, that's so
Right.
true.
And
yeah.
so in our traditional dances, dancing is a representation of who you are and what you believe in.
Right,
Right. And
yeah.
so there's great philosophy. And while we started structuring that, I kind of like stumbled across developing the education curriculum that doesn't fit, so comfortably inside this box of today's
Right,
society,
yeah,
but,
yeah.
reinvesting in how can we not leave the fundamental practices and the philosophy that is so powerful and the root of our indigenous way of life,
Right, yeah.
and not it fit so neatly inside of a box, but organize it well enough that it will become acceptable to do so.
Right.
So so going into schools a lot of the times, and then it was just, I always say this, dance was a golden stepping stone to what really life had to offer me, because somewhere along the lines when I started developing the Aboriginal School of Dance,
Yeah.
I realized that I was actually a pretty good entrepreneur. And then, really understanding business and strategy.
But your dad's in business as well, right? So you
My
kinda
parents.
your parents are-
Actually, my
mom
mom
and dad.
was the one that put her foot down and said, "No, this is what we're going to do." And my dad, I mean,
I know,
happy
yeah.
wife, happy life,
Life,
right?
yes.
So my dad had no choice but to kind of go along with it, and he did. And
my
both
dad
of
was
them
the
are
same.
See?
Followed by mom to Cross Lake.
Oh my goodness! I mean, I think both of us kind of have a little bit of that
Yeah, similar,
commonality.
yeah.
So your mom is Indigenous,
Yes, yeah, yeah.
and like full Indigenous, or there? What is the background for you?
She's got my grandmother's. I wish my mom was here because she's a bit of a historian, but I believe my grandmother was from Island Lake. That area.
We're related.
Yeah.
No
Cousin.
marriage.
And then and then my grandfather, his mom, I think, is Aboriginal, and then his dad is Scotland.
So you're a troublemaker.
So Scottish.
Sorry, Scott.
And
Scottish
Irish
people, but
and Irish. I like my whiskey.
just a little
Just
bit
kidding.
of troublemaker in there.
You gotta be. So yeah, I'm a good mix.
Yeah.
Mix.
Well,
But yeah, definitely.
that's why you're short.
I'm the runt. The rest of my family's all big, like Mark and Robert. They're all like 6
Yeah,
feet.
no,
and-
they're all tall.
And then there's me. I
So
got
in the
runt.
sequence in your family, you are the middle-ish.
Number 3. Number 3 is a good number.
So they ran out of energy at that time.
and then that time.
And then
I
it
think my
picked
mom was
back up
drinking and
again.
smoking.
Oh my God. Don't talk like that about your
Mind you, I do look
mama.
like the mailman, so I don't know. Not we didn't have a mailman.
You mean the postman?
the postman.
There was no mailman. There was a postman.
Yeah, you had to go to the one stop post office there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but pretty similar. Yeah, pretty similar upbringing.
So, how far was your guys' post office?
Ours wasn't. I can't remember now.
Like, did you have to
growing
take
up.
a skidoo to get to the post office?
No, we would walk.
So you were total res. You were a res rat. Like you grew up on the res.
Well, Cross Lake is like said. There's a res like there's Michimac,
Yeah.
and then they had the community count, like the community side,
Yeah.
That's where my dad built his hotel and restaurant. But
Okay.
it's pretty much
So-
we're all one community, right?
I recall that there was a commonality in our conversation, and I honestly think that you should actually share with everybody
What's
the
that?
story.
Uh-oh.
Oh.
Our divorces?
So yeah.
No, I was kidding.
So I was talking about like dog teams and all this kind of stuff, and then you shared a story with me, and I
Yes.
actually, I have to be honest, I actually really enjoyed that story because I think it captures what we go through as young people, but there's like a little twist because there are no city kids that can actually tell a story like that. So you had a dog team.
I did. When I
Okay.
grew up with my grandmother, I used to have a dog team, and I had three. I think there was 4 dogs. I still remember there was like Puff was one of them. Puff and Silver was my lead dog.
Okay.
I got from my uncle. So I used to, and I always wanted to race.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, that's
I-
right. 'Cause
Yeah.
you
So
won
I
a race,
trained
didn't
for
you?
I trained for like 2 years, I think it was, and then it was a 3-kilometer race for the kids under 16, I believe it was, and I raced and I won. I think I was
Look
the
at
first one from
you.
Cross Lake to win first place out of all, because
Nice.
most of the mushers would come in and then they'd hook up and their sons would race, and they always had like these
Yeah.
championship teams, right? But
Yeah.
I still remember that.
Okay,
And I won.
so
Oh, and one time my mom gave me shit for something. I can't remember what it was. And I was going to run away. I used to go to my grandma's house, right? So and she lived across the street. But she wasn't there. She was in Walker Lake with my cousin Keith. I
Yeah.
remember that, Keith McLeod. So I said, well, I'm going to go there. And it was late. It was like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, like after school.
so it was,
It was in winter.
winter time.
It was winter time.
Which means that 4 o'clock it's already starting
Almost
to
dark.
get dark.
Yeah, it was already starting to get dark. So I hooked up my dog team, and I'm running away, mush, mush, you know, like. And off I went, and it was a road to mile 45 towards Oxford House and God's
Were
Lake
you
Narrows.
crying?
Not at the beginning. At the beginning, I was so angry. I was so angry, and I'm like, I'm out of
swearing.
here, and I'm gone, and I'm mushing, and then maybe like once it started getting dark, and I realized like, oh crap, it's getting dark, and what am I doing?
You got some.
And then that's when the fear started coming in. And I'm like, go, Silver, go. And then I start freezing. My legs, my feet were freezing, my hands.
That's like
'cause
such
I didn't
a
prepare.
Disney clip. Go, Silver,
Yeah,
go.
And then I got so cold. I couldn't, like, and then the dogs just started trotting. And I was like so cold. And then, so I jumped in the thing. And I was like, because I couldn't stand up anymore. So I
Yeah.
jumped into the thing. And I was like, go, Silver, mush, mush. That's when I cried like a baby. I was like, oh, Mom, I'm sorry. Oh, Mom, help me.
What did I do to myself?
But I think someone had saw me going down that road,
Yeah.
and then they phoned my mom, and then somehow I think it was two-way radio, or I guess it was, or something, or somebody found out. So all I remember is my grandma, a skidoo light coming, and I think I almost made it 18 miles, I think, or something. And then a skidoo light was
Wait,
coming.
the first time you told me that story,
Or
it
was
was
it
like
20?
40.
No, that was what cabin was, 45, but I think I made about half. And then the skidoo light was coming, and there was my Keith, and then my grandmother in the back of the jumper. They call it, the sled.
So you have to describe what your grandma looked like in the jumper.
Oh, they just had like a mat, and then she had a blanket, and then she had she wore this always, the beaver hat, saying she's
Yeah.
all tied up, and she was like holding on. She's like, I don't even know how old she was, maybe like 75 or
Oh
something.
my goodness.
Yeah.
Coming to save little Timmy.
Save little Timmy. And I remember she threw me on a sled, threw the dogs on, and off we went back to Walker Lake because it was closer, I guess. So yeah, it must have been closer to the cabin because we went there, and I just remember my grandmother put my feet. She took off her jacket and stuck my feet underneath her arms here, and then
My
was like, yeah, I know.
goodness.
Yeah. So, but I
And
learned a
then-
valuable lesson.
And then you showed up and started to warm up. And did
And then
she
once
not
I was
give
warm,
you a good talking to?
once I was warm, and then she started giving me shit. But she hit me first. Don't ever do that again. She grabbed me. She used to use a knuckle, right? Just bam, bam, bam.
Oh,
things
the
you
love
do,
of the grandmothers,
the
eh?
love of the grandmothers. Yeah, but it was tough. Yeah, and I was the same. Like I had to. There was no high school, right? So we had to leave.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things where you gotta. Then I was like 100. Like I love
So
trapping. I love the bush.
did you feel like when you left that you were ready to leave? Because I mean, you know what I mean? Like
No.
there's some of us that are ready to leave, and then there's others that still, and each experience is different,
Yeah,
right?
everybody's different. But no, I wasn't ready at all. Like, boom, and you're here, and then you're yeah, same thing is learning how to use the bus,
Navigate.
navigate around.
And you ended up with a what family?
Indonesian family
And
from
how did
Jakarta.
how did they know that there was this Indian boy,
They
Tim?
put a notice at one of the churches
Yeah.
and said, looking for would somebody take this cute,
This
handsome
cute little Indian boy.
this little-
Charity.
But a little
did-
half from Cross Lake. Would you take him into your home and then of course they paid a monthly set.
But you know, like it's kind of crazy because when you and I were talking about that, I mean, it may have not, because I mean, really, you're the only one that was experiencing that. But when I was experiencing listening to when you told me that, I'm like,
right.
dude, that sounds like residential school. Like you got removed from your community and you got put with a family that you didn't know. And I mean, what was the purpose behind what they were doing? And again, I don't know if that family was like loving and supportive and
Right,
made sure
yeah.
that you had all of the things that you needed.
Well, they cooked. I learned how to cook rice, and Indonesian food was the best. I loved it.
So when you look back, like how long were you with this family for?
2 years, well, a year and a half, and then
You bailed?
Grade 11, I bailed. I didn't finish. Like I got in trouble. Like that year, there's a lot of alcohol and like drinking and coming here, and then Thompson or Woboden to get our beer, and then we'd bring it to Cross Lake, and then when we had it, you drank it all, right? You just because you had to
So
get it done.
you were part of the contributing factor of bringing alcohol into the community.
We did bring alcohol, but we drank it. We didn't.
I didn't sell it. I just drank it.
I just drank it. But I mean, and then so I had no concept of, how to handle all that stuff.
Yeah.
So when you come here, it's like, whoa, you got it everywhere. And it's
So where did you end up, like, after you were just kind of like out on your own and not, dealing with, I mean, of course, there's a certain level of like responsibility and obligation, whether that was your mom or your grandma kind of giving you the good knuckle on the head, but
yeah.
and then coming here and then you're with this family and you're being taught how to make rice. And then all of a sudden you're gone. And this is one thing that I've really kind of come to know is, isn't it amazing how it doesn't matter how many different people take different paths, there's still this commonality, which is, I mean, really at the end of the day, all human beings crave the same thing, which is happiness. And however they obtain that is really kind of the beauty behind creating these types of stories, right? I mean, what my perception is of success, or, I mean, I don't walk through life judging people, but I mean, it's so crazy how like two people completely, because you're like way older than me, but just a little bit, but really at the end of the day, like way older than me. But I mean, two people that are from the north that have had completely different experiences, and what we do for a living is like so the opposite.
Yeah.
But we literally, and I think that that's a prime example, especially because of what the world is going through right now.
Yes.
Is we can have different experiences. We can create, different success and how we define success. We can come from completely different upbringings, but really at the end of the day, you can sit down as two people and laugh and talk. And I mean, you and I may have like completely different perceptions or opinions about different things.
Yeah.
And it's okay.
And that's today's world. You can't say anything without somebody getting angry or.
I know. I mean, I use the term Indian a lot, and to me, I don't take offense to it, and some other people do, and that's okay too. Because I mean, people only do what they do, what's inside, based off of their experiences, and that's okay too. But I think that even some of the things that we're going through right now, like these hot topics of whether or not somebody should be masked and 6 feet apart and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah. 6 feet.
We are 6 feet apart. Notice the big table between us. But I mean, and these are the things too, right? Is that I look back at this one video that I seen, and it was like this little kid, and he's walking his dog, and he's wearing a ski mask, and it's like hole here, big hole here, and his older brother's like, dude, what are you doing? He's like, I'm walking the dog, and he's like, you're supposed to be masked because of COVID. What are you doing? He's like, I'm wearing a mask, and he's wearing like, a ski mask, and he's like, no, it's supposed to be covering your face. I mean, he's like, it's
Yeah.
so that you're safe, and he's like, dude, I feel safe. Right. So I mean, like, I thought that is such a sweet clip, because it brings the innocence back of like, I mean, I think that it's important to honor each other's opinion, but as well kind of like learn how to laugh at the massive differences that we're experiencing right now.
Nah, see, my opinion, like, it's they shouldn't have shut down. I understand in the beginning when they weren't sure.
Yeah.
But after 2 weeks, and then, but to shut down the whole economy, like, this economy's ruined for
But
10 years probably.
But
for
see, this is
our
the thing
grandchildren
is
to be paying
that
for this.
I've just noticed that
And-
people that sit in positions that have the comfort
Mm-hmm.
of, I mean, yes, there's a lot of unknowns,
Right.
but the ones that have not been laid off, or the ones that could, kind of like navigate through it, they're
Yeah.
like, no, we got to shut down.
Yeah.
But for entrepreneurs that understand how the economy fluctuates and
Rates,
how
yeah, or-
hard that is to
Yeah.
recapture, I think those are the ones that really, I mean, it's a completely different perspective. And
Yeah.
that's why I'm thinking that, in these opinions, like for the elderly, I do believe, and I don't think that it would be safe or respectful for people to say COVID doesn't exist, period.
Exactly. No, I agree with that. Yeah.
Because
It
there
is
are viruses, there
Yeah.
are things that happen. It's the same thing even with bacteria in the
Yes,
blood. I
yeah.
mean, that's a part of life.
Right.
And I think that any really smart person can go back to the basics, not only in what science has reiterated,
Right. Yeah.
but just go back to basics and go, you know what? Our indigenous tribes have known this for a very long time.
Yeah.
We're not meant to live on top of each other.
Right.
And, I mean, even some of the basic practices, and I was actually having
Yeah.
a conversation about that earlier. It's like my dad, I remember when I was like, Dad, why can't we have a washroom? Like, I want a toilet inside.
Yeah.
And he always used to say to me, why would anybody want to poop in the corner of their house? But there are certain luxuries, but in order to obtain, and I mean, when you grow up in the city, you look at a toilet and you don't see it as a luxury, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But when you have a toilet, you have to clean it. You have to do this. You have to do that. You have to maintain it. There's all of this responsibility
slop hill
behind.
boy.
See?
You were the running water.
You're a
Dumping slop
hill
hill
boy.
boy.
But and this is what I mean is that there comes great responsibility to have what we consider, or what I consider to be a luxury, which is
Yeah.
a toilet in your bathroom.
Right.
And then when you take a look at like the microscopic bacteria that's floating around in your bathroom, right? And so it kind of reiterates what my dad was talking about, but at the same time, when we know that there's just very basic things like, and science, it's not that science is proving that it exists.
Right.
It's that science reiterates that it exists, right? Because these things have existed for hundreds of years.
Yes, that's
so
right.
bacteria exist, viruses,
exist.
they come and they go.
Yeah.
Your body has been designed to handle. Now, that's not to say that every body can handle that.
Right.
And so, I mean, for the families that have been directly affected by COVID-19, my heart
Yeah, it's
really
sad, yeah.
does. It is,
is
but
sad, yeah.
it's the same as my heart goes out to people that have had to experience cancer.
Yeah.
And I mean, when we look at the realities of what can cause cancer,
Yeah.
maybe on a day-to-day basis, it's not amplified anymore because society just kind of makes it acceptable. I
Yeah,
mean,
it is,
you look
yeah,
at your
just
cell phones
Yeah.
and what
Your
it can
processed
do.
food and
Your processed food. I mean,
Yeah.
like, you can't even eat corn.
Yeah.
Because of how much pesticides are actually put into the corn, right?
Well, it was crazy when they, essential services was, the liquor stores,
Yeah.
the smoke shops, the marijuana stores, yet a gym where people go to get healthy and
Yeah.
work out is not essential service.
Well, and then you
just
look at
those
the-
basic things, and you wonder who is, what common sense. They were closing the parks and everything else, being outside,
Yeah.
healthy, fresh air.
Well, the thing that I'm really
doesn't make
having
sense
a
how
hard time swallowing is you go to the gym to be masked. while
Right.
you're doing cardio.
Yeah, yeah.
That, I mean, even just in a general sense, your body needs oxygen.
Yeah, exactly.
But going into the gym, you need and require more oxygen
Right.
than just when you're normally walking around. So, I mean,
Yeah.
like it's stuff like that where it is really, uh, I mean, I don't go to the gym when there's like tons and tons of people there.
Right.
I have always, even prior to COVID, I always used to wash my hands when I'm out in public because
Yeah.
I don't know what the heck somebody else was doing with their hands before they
Yeah.
touched the door, right? So
Exactly.
there's almost like a certain level of risk even prior to COVID because again, you know, even in our indigenous culture, we weren't meant to live on concrete. We weren't meant to live so confined,
Yeah.
being inside all the time. I mean, there's vitamins like vitamin D, being
Yeah.
out in the sun, right? So, I mean, I take kind of all of the stuff in balance where you know, like I'm fully aware of what I can and cannot be doing in the
Right.
city, regardless if there's COVID-19 or not.
Yes.
Just the same as when you're in the bush.
Yeah.
There's responsibility. You have to know that there are certain dangers in the bush.
Yes.
And not everybody's going to survive
Yeah.
either. I mean, even when I look at the statistics versus like, and maybe it is in human nature that when you don't understand something that you develop a fear for it.
Right.
And maybe, you know, of course, a lot of people don't understand what COVID-19 was. And
Yeah.
so they develop a fear. And I just don't like, I
maybe,
mean, the
I think
biggest
we-
thing that I find is very saddening is that I mean, like people are starting to hide their cough because everybody's like, oh, the person coughed. And it's like, it's a natural bodily function. I can't help it.
And you're looked
right?
at with disgust, you know,
Yeah.
like, oh, and then people walk away. I know it's
Or
crazy. the
don't
word-
touch anybody.
It,
You know,
it doesn't make
it's-
any sense what is happening,
No,
especially
and
in all these all the first world
Fear
and
mongering.
It's fear mongering, right?
Yeah.
The fear, and you know, I have my mother's 78 years old. Of course, I worry about her, right?
Yeah.
And I worry about because it's essentially
well, every flu season too. That's
yeah,
something
yeah.
that
I
you have to
worry
take
every
into
every year, right,
consideration.
about her, and it's this, you know, in general, it's people who are older are, you know, above 70 or have underlying conditions, like
Yeah.
But in general, you know, we're all going to get it at some point, right?
Yeah.
But being young, as far as you know, and you're healthy, you're going to get over it, right?
Well, but
in
you know, when
general,
I look at the comparative of like even some of the statistics, and I know that there are some people that don't